Julie, for the said written apologies, please, Julie. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost, and good morning, members. Provost Jim Todd.
Yeah.
Councillor Stephen Canning.
Present, thanks.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
Thank you, Julie. I'm here.
Councillor John McFadden.
Here.
Councillor John McGee.
Yeah.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
I have an apology from Councillor Maureen Mackay. Councillor David Richardson.
Present, Julie.
Councillor James Adams. Councillor Lillian Jones.
Present, Julie.
Councillor Ian Linton. Councillor Douglas Reid. Councillor Graham Barton.
Here, thanks.
Councillor Graham Boyd.
Here, thanks, Julie.
Councillor Barry Douglas.
Here, Julie.
Councillor Neil Ingram.
Here, thanks, Julie.
Councillor Peter Mayburn.
Present, thanks, Julie.
Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Beverly Clark.
Here.
Councillor Sally Cogley.
Here.
Councillor Kevin McGregor.
Here, thanks, Julie.
I have an apology from Councillor Linda Holland. Deputy Provost Claire Leach.
Here too, Julie.
Thank you. Councillor William Lennox.
Morning, here.
Councillor Alison Simmons.
Here.
Councillor Billy Crawford.
Here.
Councillor June Kyle.
Present.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Here, Julie, thanks.
Councillor Neil Watts.
Present, Julie.
Councillor Drew Filson.
Here.
Councillor Jennifer Hogg. And Councillor Elaine Stewart.
Here, thanks, Julie.
Thanks, members.
Thanks very much, Julie. Members, just quickly, a lot of things been happening since we last met, a way back. Cumnock Juniors cheque presentation. This was 6th of January. It was great to finally present Cumnock Juniors with a cheque for £1,000 from the council in recognition for Cumnock winning Scottish Junior Cup last year. So good to them. The funds will go onto their brilliant plans for their new community stand. I'll no mention a game last night, but we was robbed. The first Lego League Challenge, 19th of January. We went along to Kilmarnock College to the Scottish finals of the Lego Challenge. This is a great idea for school children to use their skills, budding engineers, technicians, and it's problem solving. There's an assault course, obstacle course where they have to get motorised Lego vehicles through, and it was great to see the minds all working together, and good luck to the team that represent Scotland in the British finals. We all went along Bernardo's Co-op Happy Hurlford film premiere, which is a great idea for young folk, showing everybody how they're going to set up their own food pantry in Hurlford. Absolutely brilliant the way they've done these things. It's a great asset to the families, and it gives those young folk a real understanding and some great experiences and how to bring up a film about how their lives are. On the 10th of February, we went up to Darvel, and this was to the presentation for the King's Award to DART, Darvel Action Regeneration Group. And it was great to see Iona MacDonald, our Lord Lieutenant in Ayrshire and Arran, presented the King's Award to the committee. We're very lucky. I think we've got the best Lord Lieutenants department in the whole of Scotland. East Ayrshire Schools Primary, this was in the Sport Hall at Ayrshire Athletics on the 16th of February. And the finalists were Dunlop, Nether Robertland, James Hamilton and Arran Hill. Dunlop Primary School came out as the winners, so good luck to them. They were absolutely brilliant, and they were great ambassadors for the schools, all the children. In the King's New Year Honours list in January, it was great to see folk from East Ayrshire who were recognised. So a massive congratulations to Professor Sir James MacDonald, who received the Knight's Grand Cross of the Order of the British Empire for services to engineering, education and energy. Chris Smith, who we know, who's a teacher at Grange Academy. Chris received an MBE for services for education. Willie Campbell for Stewarton, everybody knows Willie, got an OBE for his services to the community, principally for the Boys Brigade, good for Willie. And Mrs Shendell Harvey from South Ayrshire, who received an OBE for services to dads. Shendell was previously a teacher at New Farmloch Primary School. So well done to them. Ayrshire Fiddle Orchestra had a visit to the Palace of Westminster on the 23rd of January, and Heather Anderson and Kirsty Gemmell Kilmarnock Academy and Robert Burns, respectively, travelled to London with the Ayrshire Fiddle Orchestra and were delighted to perform at 10 Downing Street and the House of Commons for the Burns Day celebrations. The girls and everyone from the orchestra felt very proud and honoured, and what great ambassadors for East Ayrshire. A wee special one for Billy Roberton. I don't know if you know Billy, but those of us from Kilmarnock, when we saw the Harriers out all these years of my life running, you knew everything was okay with the world. And Billy, through adversity, has kept running, kept involvement with the Harriers. And he was recognised and he won the Scottish Sports Award for Community Champion at Glasgow on the 8th of December last year. Recognition of his voluntary work as well. He's worked tirelessly over the year helping with the Harriers. And Billy suffered a terrible accident on his bike and he lost half his leg. As you can see, it has not stopped him doing the things he does. So well done to Billy. And it's great that we can announce today that I nominated the Kilmarnock branch and David Dixon, who's the president of the branch here in Kilmarnock, for the Scottish Veterans Awards. And I'm delighted to announce that the branch have been shortlisted. So good luck to them. They're in the final, and I'll keep you posted with that. And I'm thrilled to announce that the charity motor neuron disease for this year, we're almost at £10,000 and we'll get that. That's absolutely brilliant because it was not about raising money. It was all about raising awareness. And I think when we can hand over a cheque for £10,000 later on this year, that'll be very well received. And finally, just a wee shout out to our Claire, who said bye-bye to her dad this week. And it was a lovely celebration of his life. So thanks for that, folks. Now I'm going to go in and start. If there's any declarations of interest, please say. I think we got that brilliant advice for David last couple of weeks, interests, and I don't think there's anything jumping out for today's proceedings. Thank you. We're okay with that. I'm going to go into the previous minutes of the 14th of December, and I would move as a correct record.
Yeah, second.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, Deputy Provost, thank you. Folks, any questions? We're okay, thank you. Going to go into the Cabinet and Committee minutes now, and as usual, I'll ask the Leader to approve en bloc, and we'll go through the questions if there are any for there. Leader.
Happy to move on block, Provost.
Second up, Provost.
Thank you very much, guys. Any questions? Leader.
Just maybe in raising point page 63 in terms of the pavement parking enforcement. I'm loath to mention last night's football match, but some of the parking last night around the ground, including quite a significant amount of pavement parking, was absolutely disgraceful. A number of residents there were blocked in. I don't know if there's anything we can do to advertise the order, but just, parking the top of yellow lines and, blocking streets off and all the rest of it. I know some officers were out because there was a few yellow tickets, but again, there was widespread just people ignoring the regulations, and I just wondered if there's anything else we can do in terms of enforcement and publicity.
Thank you, Provost. Thanks, Leader. Yeah, there was a conversation between myself and the head of Ayrshire Roads Alliance prior to him moving on to his new role in terms of how we can better utilise the parking attendance across East and South Ayrshire. So we'll continue with that piece of work. I'll take that forward in Kevin's absence, and we'll report back to members accordingly.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Provost. Just in the back of Leader's remarks, yeah, we'll probably find it's all in our inboxes this morning. But there's been a request from residents, would it be possible to consider opening Gargetson Primary School car park as a means to release the sort of pressure in that area during the football matches?
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Councillor Jones. We'll pick that up through the colleagues within estates, and again, I'll come back to members, but take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGee.
Aye, this is just as bad as the result last night if you're a Kelly fan. I think there is folk genuinely trying to get to the football and want to park within walking distance. And we've got yellow lines all over the place, double yellows, that should have no consequence at that time of night. But I do agree, there is parking that is unacceptable. And I've brought up the issue of using Gargison Primary some time back, and I was told it was a no-go. So I find it strange that we can suddenly just look at it again the day after I've already been told that we couldn't do it. So if we're going to look at it again, I want to ken what's changed in the meantime when some other councillor bring it up. Thank you.
No, that's fine. We'll get a report back for that, Richard. Thanks. Folks, Councillor Maitland.
Just on the subject of last night, my street was blocked. People were blocked in. So even if they're parking badly at Rugby Park, believe me, it's getting displaced all the way back to near the train station as well. And I was nowhere near my street last night. I was 3 streets away. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe need a discussion with ARA, the police and the Kilmarnock Football Club. Well, we can talk about that maybe at the Police, Fire and Rescue Committee. Might be able to raise that there, see if there's any locus there. Thanks, folks. Any other questions on the Cabinet Committee minutes? Okay, thank you. On to item 4 now, and this is the service concession arrangements, pages 86 to 93, and Joe's going to introduce this paper. Over to Joe.
Thank you, Provost. Morning, members. The genesis of this report is flexibility that's been provided to local government by Scottish Government. It's a flexibility that has a sunset clause of 31st of March this year. And essentially it relates to service concession arrangements, which in the case of East Ayrshire relates to the PPP contract for those schools that were built in 2008, and also the not-for-profit distributed model schools built through Hub Southwest that came to the council in 2018. So essentially the schools in the PPP contract and the schools that are hosted within the Makovani campus. The flexibility itself lets councils vary the period over which they recognise some of those payments. I'm grateful to members for meeting with me on several occasions, both in groups and individually, to talk through how this works. Essentially, the council pays an annual charge, a unitary charge, to both contractors for using these schools. You know from the conversations we've had that that unitary charge is made up of 3 elements. It's made up of an interest payment that is given to both contractors. It's made up of essentially a payment for use or a facilities management cost as well within that unitary charge. And the third part of the unitary charge is the repayment of the debt that the contractors incurred when they built the assets, or in the case of Mauchline Primary, when they refurbished the asset. And the flexibility hones in on that last part, on that debt part and that debt repayment element of the contracts that exist within East Ayrshire Council. The flexibility says that you can amend on a notional technical basis the life of the assets compared to the contract term. In other words, we've got the schools that were built in 2008 per the PPP contract, and that's a contract that runs for 30 years. And in terms of the Makovani schools, that's a contract signed in 2018 that runs for 25 years. It lets councils consider whether or not the normal asset lives of their usuals or their other schools should be aligned to, or should align the contract, the lives of the PPP and the NPD schools should align to the normal asset life of our schools. We carry schools for a 40-year asset life. And so we have the ability to amend the debt repayment of the PPP schools from 30 years to 40, and from the Makovani schools from 25 to 40, and adjust that notional debt element. The flexibility is unique. It required a specific regulation to make it happen. And it lays down a number of conditions for its use. First of all, that the report that considers this has to be presented to full council for consideration. That specific disclosures have to be made as a result, both in terms of the report before you today, and also in terms of our annual accounts that will be presented to the auditors in June. It also requires the council's Section 95 officer to give assurance to council that the report before you today presents changes which are affordable, sustainable and prudent. And in that regard, you'll note that in the report I have given that assurance as long as three conditions are met. The first is that the non-cash back gain arising from this is not used for capital expenditure. It's not used to plug ongoing budget gaps, and that it's used in the medium to long term. In other words, it's used 5 to 10 years hence, and I'll explain why in a moment. And so in working out the calculations and the flexibility affords the council's three potential options, we've gone for option 3, which allows us to unwind back to 2008, go retrospective and prospective, and it also lets us do that using the annuity model. So as you can imagine, and as we discussed in groups, this is a fairly technical accounting arrangement, and so unusual that if approved, it requires essentially a journal entry to move £16.717 million from an unusable reserve on our balance sheet into the general fund as a non-cash backed reserve. It's why in the paper yesterday to Cabinet, we've amended our reserve strategy to include mention of non-cash backed reserves in our general fund. And so what the paper before you says today is to ask you for approval to proceed with this flexibility. In doing so, it would release £17 million. And we spoke yesterday, and I'm sure we'll speak today, around that £40 million fund for the next 10 years. We're using the pension underspends for the first 6 years of that in order to make £4 million a year for the first 6 years. And this flexibility presents and provides the further £4 million a year for the last 4 years, taking the total to 10 years, £4 million a year for the next 10 years. The flexibility also is first in today's item agenda because we have forward booked, as we said yesterday, the prospective, the ongoing gain from this in order to close next year's budget gap. So that essentially is the service concessions. Fairly technical. We are using it for a specific purpose as part of that £40 million. And in doing so, I believe that based on the conditions that I've attached to it, that it's both prudent, sustainable and affordable. And on that basis, Provost, I'll stop there and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Joe. Folks, we'll open it out. Leader?
It's not really the question, probably just to welcome all the effort that's went into this, and to note it puts us in good stead for facing the difficult times ahead of us, and appreciate some of the work that's went into it, and note just some of the comments from Joe there in terms of using this prudently and wisely for the long-term sustainability of this authority and addressing some of the hardcore problems that we need to face. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Provost. And just to echo much of what the leader has said, it's little wonder we've got the Finance Director of the Year in the room with us and a fantastic team around him, because it is a team effort, I know that, and I'd like to thank them, all of them, for their involvement here in terms of this report. And, we are in a fortunate position in this authority where other authorities are absolutely using this to plug gaps this year. We are fortunate that we are able to look to the future and what really needs to be done. So absolutely echo what the leader has said, and thank you again for bringing forward this paper. And I think also it's clear most of us are not accountants, so and certainly I'm not, but bringing forward something in layman's terms that members can understand and can be secure in the knowledge that they're supporting something today. So I certainly welcome it and would support it. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Linton.
Thanks, Provost. It's just really to echo what Barry and Dougie have said. The technicalities around this are way beyond my pay grade, but I think Joe's went out his way to explain to all councillors just exactly what this involves. And it's significant that we take this to the side and hold this for projects that will benefit everybody in East Ayrshire, rather than, as Barry's already mentioned, just using it to plug funding gaps in the early years and losing this windfall, which I think will be significant over the next 10 years.
Thank you. Councillor McFadden.
Yes, again, I'd just like to echo what everyone else has said and thank Joe and his team for the fantastic piece of work and for involving us all so closely with it and explaining it all to us, though I think a degree in mathematics might have helped us. And it's very good for East Ayrshire that we're doing this, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Folks, can't see anybody else. The recommendations are there. Are we okay with the recommendations? Thank you. We're going to item 5 now. So we're setting the 24-25 revenue budget and the order of debate and time for speeches. In respect of the revenue budget paper, I would ask Council to note that in accordance with standing orders, the mover of a motion or amendment should speak for no more than 10 minutes, with the succeeding speakers entitled to speak for no more than 5 minutes. The original mover, of course, shall have the right to speak for no more than 5 minutes at the end. So we'll consider and remit the recommendations from the Cabinet meeting held yesterday, and the Leader will introduce his proposals. We'll ask for a seconder, and thereafter we'll take any amendments as needed. Leader.
Thanks, Provost. I've forgot my reading glass again and I'm struggling with reading my own writing. Hopefully I'll get through this process. Provost members, this year has been a very difficult budget indeed, with great external pressures placed upon us in terms of our resources and our ability to deliver services to our communities. Changes in population, discussed this yesterday and before, particularly in the south of our community, which has seen significant outward migration over the years. It's seen significant reduction in our JAE, while the demand for services in these areas, particularly areas of industrial decline that have also issues with rural population, are actually increasing. So we're getting less resources to deal with these issues, and that's hopefully will result in a body of work that we really need to do. Crude data gathering and imposition of strict rules on teacher numbers ignores and pays little heed to shifting educational school populations and demands within our services. For example, meeting the needs of an exponentially growing ASN sector is no heed is taken of that in terms of our allocation. In fact, the crude census, we have been effectively threatened with sanctions to our budget, but thankfully that's been not going to happen this year, and we'll continue to fight any imposition of sanctions on this authority. All these issues I was able to meet personally when I'm as part of the Queensland delegation to meet with the Deputy First Minister and government ministers last week in New St Andrews House in Edinburgh, and I can assure members I made East Ayrshire's position quite clear to them, as well as the situation nationally. However, we here in East Ayrshire can be proud that due to diligent financial stewardship from our Chief Executive and our Head of Finance and financial officers and our other director, as well as active participation all year round from elected members, to have maintained a position that's probably in relative terms better than most local authorities. I think we all maintain that local government is good government, and through this we've been able to close the 9.7 million gap in funding without using reserves. We've given extra protection to our education services, complied with the health and social care integration scheme, and have, as previously mentioned, a £40 million fund over 10 years to deliver the pillars of Christie, and not just in spirit, but actual real terms. which are addressing the issues of poverty, depopulation, while grasping the significant issues we have in some of our areas with poverty and obviously home to grow our own economy. We will engage directly and thoroughly with the third sector, Joseph Rowntree Trust, Scottish Government, UK Government, anyone to address these outstanding issues for our communities. We'll tap everybody's door to make sure that we have the resources to equip our people with the solutions that can bring back recovery for our communities. We propose, therefore, that we ask the Chief Executive, with specific reference to the £40 million that I mentioned there, to use these additional resources for cross-cutting reviews as we look forward to system change taking place to benefit our communities over the next few years. We look forward to reviews on employability, getting appropriate skills and jobs, money in people's pockets, probably the best thing to do to get ourselves out of a recession locally and nationally. Community wealth building, not just talked about, but actually implemented. And we'll do everything to boost our economy locally and bring jobs, services and prosperity to our residents. Secondly, we want to review in financial inclusion, making sure that our citizens get every pound they're entitled to, building on some of the outstanding work they've done, some of our teams have done in some of our school campuses, and do this, extend this right aboard. We are sure we can do more with the right resources, and to get pounds in people's pockets is what we're trying to achieve. We'll address some of the issues of depopulation and stagnation in some of the economy to stop population hemorrhaging from some of our former industrial areas. Some of the former coalfield areas don't just suffer from industrial decline, but also suffer from rural depopulation as well. This goes for other areas right across East Ayrshire too, where we have issues of a decline in industrial areas and a need to regrow our economy. As we discussed last week at Council, we must arrest this decline and make these communities able to thrive on their own. And that's a priority, and that's why we want a review there. We want safer and clean streets. All members around these tables, week after week, want to put their shoulder behind civic pride. Last year we put additional resources into civic pride and dealing with antisocial behaviour. We want to continue this work, but we want to reflect on how we've tried to attempt this with some of the means that we did last year and expand on that and do better. This continues to be a problem that members have highlighted throughout the year. We need to evaluate what we've already done and make sure that we have resources to continue dealing with these issues. I'm sure that every member around this table will hopefully get behind that. In terms of our capital programme, as we mentioned yesterday, we still have quite a considerable sum of money that we want to invest in our communities, whether it's housing, schools, and other things that benefit our community. We know that there's problems just now with the construction industry, inflation, but as yesterday, we need to review how we deliver services, make sure we get as much money in as we can, and look at how we deliver our capital programme, and we need a review there as well. We need to make sure that, unlike others, this £40 million that we mentioned in the earlier paper isn't just used for in the short term, as others have said, to plug a budget gap. We need a 10-year radical plan guided by members who know their communities, with advisors to make real and effective change, particularly around poverty and inequality. We have demonstrated that we can provide over 200 apprenticeships, and we did deliver those recently. We can see the effects that these have had to families and to the people, mainly young people, and getting them back on to the market in terms of jobs and enterprise. But this year, with immediate effect, Provost, I would like to move the immediate financial measures to address some of these points that I've made, as on top of the reviews and the £40 million to come. Provost, I tend to put 256,000 to extend civic pride for a further year. put 180,000 for temporary posts for the corporate enforcement team to deal with a number of issues that are blighting our towns and villages. Provide additional support for roads and pavements and add £400,000 to our roads and pavement programme. To remove option of housing community option 19 to increase garden waste permit scheme, which will take 137,000 out of the budget. To, bear in mind that we've got a waste review ongoing. And also deliver half-price school meals for a further year at the price of 860,000, and that being the only drawdown that we intend to make from the 40 million that's in the set out in the budget, as we look forward to seeing the strategic reviews that are brought in front of members by the Chief Executive. Members, Provost, we know that we can't do everything, particularly in these difficult times, but with advice from our officers, determination on our own part, and wise investment of available resources, we can deliver a budget that we can all be proud of today. We've got a number of resources coming our way in terms of the £40 million identified, the £20 million levelling up funding money that's mentioned for Comar, and £20 million that's mentioned for Core in the southern area of the authority, plus the wind farms money that's available right across significant parts of East Ayrshire could double the investment that we already have. We need to make sure that every pound of those millions of pounds is spent wisely for the benefit of our community, tackling poverty, tackling depopulation, helping to grow the economy and give our young people in particular the start in life they deserve, and our old people the comfort in their own age in terms of the resources we put to them to give them appropriate care into their retirement in older years. This is an ambitious council. It always has been, and members, I hope that hopefully you can get round behind this budget. I move, Provost.
Thank you. Deputy Leader.
Provost, I would second that motion, but just a few words after back about the Provost has said. It has been a really, really difficult year for us all, and been able to deliver what would be a balanced budget, and I pay tribute to all the team. I'd also like to pay tribute to the man sitting next to me, the leader of the council, for his work, that not only for this council, but delivering and negotiating with Scottish Government on behalf of COSLA as well. Sometimes it's been a thankless task. It's been days and hours continually to get to the agreement where we finally got to, hopefully today. Picking up on some of the good points out through that, but delivering on the apprenticeships, yeah, it's been fantastic, and hopefully we can continue in that mode as we go forward. The corporate enforcement, I think, as the leader has said, is a vital part, and we'll look towards corporate enforcement out through every part of our community. The civic pride teams, I think we've seen the benefit in all our villages with the deep clean-ups, brightening the place up, and roads and pavements. Another vital part is difficult to deliver, again, in the current circumstances with the budgets that we have. However, we do our utmost again, and that's why the proposal's coming forward again. Again, delighted with the 160,000 that's going towards the free school meals. It's all part of this caring council that we are. I think as we go forward, and it's incumbent on all the elected members in this chamber, that we are as honest and upfront as we can be going forward with the people that we serve. And I think off the back of that, the trust will be gained and respect will be gained. So for me, Provost, I would move and second the leader.
Thank you. Got a proposal. Seconder, Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Provost. And first of all, can I thank the Leader of the Council? I know he probably hasn't been popular at some levels in his party nationally when he has been open and honest and fighting for East Ayrshire and, criticising. So credit where credit's due to Dougie. So Provost, members, here we are yet again, another budget of cuts. And as has been said before, not a single person in this room, not one of us, was elected in a platform of cutting services to care our communities, and not one person was elected promising to make cuts. Since 2016-17, £64.5 million has been cut from this council's budget, an enormous sum of money that could have made significant difference to council services had it been used to tackle the issues that we know the public want us to focus on. So yet another financial settlement we've been handed that forces the hands of this council to make incredible difficult decisions. The Chief Financial Officer has told us that the budget gap this year would have been 9.7 million, but the future really does appear even bleaker. I said to members of Cabinet yesterday that Katie Hagman might get a mention again, and she has. As SNP councillor and COSLA Resources spokesman Katie Hagman stated, whichever way you cut it, this is not a good budget for Scottish local government or the communities that we represent. I agree with Katie. As it stands, we have a budget that we really need to set by the end of this week. And we know that our share of the 144.5 million, which equates to 3.3 million for East Ayrshire Council, will only be finalised once the required teacher numbers are agreed between this council and the Scottish Government. We're required to set a budget today, and we still don't know for sure that we'll receive a share of the Barnett consequentials as we await the outcome of the last throw of the dice budget with likely reckless tax cuts by the Westminster Tory government. The March 6 budget could still have further impacts on our council services. Yet without this information, set a budget we must. We are being treated, members, with utter contempt by the Scottish Government, who have decided to impose financial penalties on councils who do not sign up to a council tax freeze. Members were being bullied into delivering an SNP pre-election bribe that the First Minister came up with on a whim, gave his Cabinet colleagues little notice of, and civil servants even less notice before he announced this policy. Members, I am absolutely clear. This council, the 32 of us, are the people who were elected to decide the council tax levels in East Ayrshire, not the Scottish Government, not the Westminster Government or anybody else. Of course, members, a council tax freeze disproportionately benefits the wealthiest in our society at the expense of the poorest. And if you don't believe me, I would urge you to listen to a plethora of anti-poverty organisations to see what they're saying and what the STUC are saying. Yet the financial penalties on East Ayrshire leave us with little alternative but to freeze the council tax. Members, I am clear, the Labour group are clear that we have two governments that are failing this and every other council across the country. It's against this background that we have to take difficult decisions that will not be without consequences. Turning first to the recommendations in the paper from Cabinet in setting the 2024-25 budget, I accept recommendations 1 to 9 with the following exception. Appendix 1 to remove proposal 19, which would have seen a 22% increase in the brown bin tax and hold the current fee of £30. Of course, I've made no secret of my disdain of this policy. However, we await the outcome of the waste review, which I had hoped would be with members by now, in order to inform our decisions for the future provision of waste and recycling across East Ayrshire. Cost of the service for not increasing the price for the garden waste permit can be met from the general fund balance for this year. I note that unfortunately, due to the constraints of our settlement for this year and what we anticipate the future will hold for us, the truth is we cannot do it all. But here are some of the Labour Group proposals. We were delighted to put forward proposals to encourage and evidence our civic pride in last year's budget, and I am pleased to see that several projects to enhance the appearance of our towns and villages has taken place. I propose a 1-year extension to this pilot on the proviso that a report is brought forward to Cabinet by the Head of Housing and Communities before the start of the financial year, detailing the outcomes of the first year of the pilot. And for this year, there is a much more of a focus on our village centres and the main community spaces in our housing schemes. And I propose to make a budget allocation to the Head of Housing and Communities of £254,000 to deliver these proposals. It is vitally important, Provost, that village centres like Hurlford, Dunmelliton, Darvel and Newcomnock and the main communal spaces in our housing schemes like Ayrshire, New Farm Loch, Nether Robertland and Short Lees see the benefits of a civic pride initiative. Inflation may be continuing to be falling, but the cost of living crisis hasn't ended and costs continue to rise for many family essentials. Whilst we continue to wait for the SNP Green Government to do what they promised regards all primary school pupils receiving a free school meal, the Labour Group's proposals for half-price school meals have undoubtedly been popular. An uptake within our school canteens demonstrates this. I would want to thank all members who supported this measure in last year's budgets, and I seek to fund it for another year from August 24 to June 25, with £860,000 coming from the £40 million Early Intervention and Prevention Fund. I have two further recommendations on additional measures which I would consider will release some of the pressure on family budgets. For 24-25, I propose the extension of a clothing grant to 3 and 4-year-olds in early years establishments. Parents and carers would be entitled to a £50 clothing grant if they have a child who attends one of our early years or one of the early years establishments in East Ayrshire. And the criteria being applied to that would be the same as it would be for the school footwear and clothing grants. This is a cost of only £30,000, and we would take that from the remaining balance of the 41.717 million service concessions and pension fund additional monies. I would also ask the Deputy Chief Executive to bring forward a report extending financial inclusion support to our schools and early years settings for a further year, with £191,000 of costs being met from the existing balance from the cost of living support. Members, the Early Intervention and Prevention Fund that we've heard in the last piece by the Chief Financial Officer will undoubtedly come under huge pressure going forward. But I hope we can see more work around apprenticeships coming forward. I'm sure members on my side of the chamber would welcome. Noting the tough settlement we face, I believe the proposals contained within the Labour Group budget can go some way to alleviate the continued cost of living pressures facing families and can extend civic pride further across the towns and villages of East Ayrshire. Members, I move the recommendations contained within the Labour Group budget. Thanks.
Thank you. And we've got, Councillor Maben.
Thank you, Provost. With a heavy heart, I would like to second the proposals from my colleague, Councillor Barry Douglas. As he has said, we didn't become councillors with a view to hitting cuts on our services and cuts to our communities. We got involved in politics to try and help our communities. And this situation we find ourselves in is dreadful. And by all accounts, there's even worse to come in the next couple of years. It truly is horrible. As far as the council tax freeze, I noticed a couple of nights ago that the SNP Minister Shona Robinson is on television, and I quote, "Everybody would acknowledge that there's a more fundamental reform of the council tax required, and we're committed to that." I think that's brilliant. After 17 years, and after promising to scrap council tax, they are now committed to reforming it. I hope it doesn't take them another 17 years. And I'll finish at that when seconding Barry's proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McFadden, yep.
Thank you, Provost. I'd like to thank all the officers involved in helping us put this budget together. It's been a huge piece of work. I feel collectively we've come up with the best budget for the people of East Ayrshire in the face of huge financial pressure put upon us by very unwelcome cuts. I'm not going to start saying who's responsible for the cuts. It is what it is. I'm very happy, especially that we can continue with this free school meals programme. And I really look forward to finding out just how much we can do with all the money that's available to us. I think we need to be positive moving forward. I don't think there's anything to be gained from working in a blame culture or negativity. I mean, we're in the situation we are. So, I think if we all keep working together, we'll get the better result for the people of East Ayrshire. So thank you very much. And thank you, Leader, for all the work you've done, in respect of all the negotiations and everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we're going to open it up now for discussion on both. There's only two, a motion and an amendment. So we're only talking on the two, and I'll open it up for discussion. So, Leader.
Thanks. Thanks, Provost. I think there must be time, just so we can maybe have a discussion, maybe call for a recess. But I think just maybe a couple of words just in terms of discussing the proposals. I've got to say, first of all, Barry, in your condemnation of the Westminster government, I couldn't agree with you more. And in terms of the issues of devolved Scottish government, that's something I'd like to get rid of as well. In terms of in the long term, I want to see Scottish independence and full control of our exchequer, and able to borrow more and are able to take more control of our own destiny. It's something I would be seeking. In terms of the issues that Peter mentioned about council tax reform, this is something I totally would totally support. I know that all the parties are trying to support this. I don't know, and it's not trying to get the reform council tax, but unfortunately, due to cooperation at Holyrood between parties, they weren't able to come to an agreement. I hope here we can get unanimity that we need council tax reform as its earliest opportunity. We need it next year if we can get it, but certainly we can't let it drift again, and I would certainly get behind that. In terms of some of the proposals, in terms of the financial inclusion, I mean, I alluded to that in my own statement. I wanted a review of that and wanted to continue to build on the work, but I didn't put any financial sum next to that, so that's something that clearly would support because it's in there implicitly. But I didn't want this budget setting to be picking away at the £40 million piece by piece. But I'm sure it was maybe during the recess that and the clothing grant, which in general terms would increasing that just would obviously fall within what we're trying to achieve with eliminating poverty as something we could consider. But we need to watch the affordability gap. And I think that's maybe primarily where we can have a discussion at the recess about if that's agreeable. Thanks, Provost.
Yep, Barry, yep.
I would just second the leader in terms of calling for a recess, Provost. I think there are clearly similarities in terms of some of the issues here and other areas where perhaps we can get agreement from the administration on as well. So more than happy to do that.
Yeah, we're going to, Graham, we're going to have a recess, guys, but there's a couple of folks still want to get in. So after there's no more questions, John's in as well. We'll get these questions here, then we'll have the recess, and then we can come back and we can have a further discussion. Councillor Boyd.
First of all, I'd like to thank Joe and the team for the great explanations of the budgets. They went into great detail. It is a complex process. Hearing both groups for the first time there is a lot of similarities and a few differences too. I'm really pleased with the half-price school meals from both parties and the civic pride. I'm delighted with that as well. I'm really big in civic pride and both parties took that on board last year. Just a wee point, we need to make sure Kilmarnock is finished first. I have mentioned that to officers. I fully support the housing schemes and the villages as well, so that's good. So both parties are there. The SNP one, I picked up 180,000 for corporate enforcement. I was out with corporate enforcement recently, just in a walk round, and I think I had looked at their Facebook page. If we're going to spend more money in this, we need to kind of do possibly a wee bit more, because they're saying what they do is they encourage people when they're dropping litter not to do it. I think we maybe start needing to use more fines because our streets aren't clean enough, and I think there's only been 4 or 5 fines issued in the last year or so. I might not have my figures correct there, but if we're going to spend money on this, we really need to start enforcing a bit more, because some people, I've seen folk littering myself, they simply will not listen. So we need to be a wee bit harder on this if we're spending valuable resources. Other than that, as I say, there's quite a lot of similarities, and as I say, I've got quite a lot on both sides there. Okay.
Thank you. We'll come back. Is that okay? I've got Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. I've got to combine a couple of things there that I heard recently for Barry and for Peter, councillors, obviously. Barry sort of went pretty strong in the SNP government at Holyrood there, I would have to say. I just wondered before he made his speech, did he manage to have a word with Mark Drakeford down in Wales, where obviously Labour are in power currently, and Mark Drakeford has went very heavily at the Westminster government, where he's in the same position as the SNP are. Now, every year since 2010, the Scottish Government's budget has been cut in real terms. And that's coming home to rest. We all know it's coming home to rest with a vengeance. But we've been working, the SNP have been working to shield the Scottish people from the worst of those cuts. And to be honest, I think we've done pretty well. Peter made the statement.
Can I just stop you for a minute, folks? When people speaking, please have respect. There's been some interventions, and I'm not going to say that Westminster word, but there's been some interventions from positions who are not talking. Please give respect to the folk that are talking. Everybody's going to get their chance to speak. So please, a bit of respect. Councillor Richardson.
Peter, Councillor Maben made the point. I'm sure he said that we all know it's going to get worse over the next few years. Well, if the polls are right, Labour are going to be in power at Westminster over the next few years. So was that an admission? Was that an admission from Councillor Maben that Labour's policies are to continue Tory austerity? And that's where I'd stop.
Okay, I'm going to take a couple of other points. Leaders coming in, and then we're going to stop because we need the recess. Leader.
It's just on a point that Councillor Boyd said. I think it needs clarification. Graham, I know you're as keen in Kilmarnock as I am, but and we want to see some of the projects in Kilmarnock finished as exponentially as quick as we can. And I'm sitting here with my Kilmarnock tie on, but the suggestion that Kilmarnock first, the emblem underneath the crest of East Ayrshire that says "Forward Together," and it says that for a reason. So I'm not looking for any preferential treatment for Kilmarnock before any other communities, not less or not more. Well, it's one community, East Ayrshire, and I don't know if you meant that, Graham, but I'd give you opportunity just to elaborate.
No, thanks, Leader. No, I didn't mean that at all. I just meant we're close to finishing Kilmarnock, and I just think we just need to get that over the line. And obviously there's influence in this strategic group, if I can say that properly as well, Dougie. So there's that too, so that's the other angle. I just thought it was an opportunity to mention that. But I did clearly mention the other villages and housing schemes too. No, we can't forget them. And you're right, it's a whole East Ayrshire, so I need to be clear on that.
That's absolutely fine. Now, I've got two other folk, and then we're going to go for the recess. And other folk can get in after the recess. So, Councillor McGee.
Hi, thanks, Provost. The lot said since I was trying to intervene, I could say a lot, but I'm not going to. But the one thing, before we go to the recess, there's independent members here and there's folk that are pariahs within their own party. So there is some similarities between the motion and the amendments. And it would be nice to see them during the recess, because they're not pointing a recess and two parties is meeting and the rest of us don't care what they're talking about because we seen anything. So I would like to see what the two proposals are in writing. The one other concern I've got, we talked about the Christie report and we talk about it often. But one of the things it talks about, and they were the priorities identified, were tightening oversight and accountability of public services, introducing consistent data gathering and performance comparators. Now, I don't say that we don't do that, we do, obviously. But Stephen, and I'm fully supportive of the additional money into roads. But I would like to ken, when we put that additional money in, what does it give us? Because during the process of this, I asked a question, which I've never get the answer to, was when we put in the extra money in previous years, what did it result in? Because we surely can't just keep throwing money at roads and then somebody goes and batters some tar into a pothole and slams it down with a shovel. I thought we had machines that cut out the squares and put it all back nice. So I would like to make sure that when we put that money in, if that's what's agreed, then we see what that money has got. There was another one we put in, and we could have veered off a wee bit, but education, we put in additional money into education regarding music tuition, which was supposed to try and target the most vulnerable kids. Never, who did that money get us? I've still never kent to this day, in case maybe I've missed it. So I think it need assurances in a couple of these things, but it's nice to see the differences of or the similarities of what's been proposed today during the recess. Thank you.
Sure, I'm sure there's nothing wrong with asking the departments, if the proposals go ahead, to come back with an answer to where the money is going to be spent, the extra money. There's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. Councillor Cowan and then Leader last word. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Provost. The Leader made reference to using the 40 million to make real longer-term change in our communities. And I know as part of the cost of living programme, we put some money into financial advisors, financial inclusion advisors, and we put one in each of the clusters. In fact, we put 8 because we put 2 into the Barney. They have had significant achievements which perhaps hasn't been shared with all members, and that is something that I think we should get as part of the review. So I just wanted to focus in on that one point, because obviously that is mentioned, that was the direction of the SNP, but obviously it's also in the Labour motion.
No, that's okay. Right, Leader, and then we're going to have the recess, folks. I'm going to say 11:15. Is that enough time? Do you think it'll take that? Leader.
It's just to address Councillor McGee's, John's concerns. I mean, absolutely, with whatever means of shuttle diplomacy I can involve in the next 20 minutes, I'll try and get around all the groups we can. I've got to say, in some of the proposals already, it's been taking soundings off all the groups and drawing some of the proposals up that are up in front of us just now. I was just, attempted to try and keep as much of that £40 million intact as possible to really affect change. But absolutely happy to list every member that's here and with whatever shuttle diplomacy I can in the next 20 minutes.
Well, no, listen, if that's the case, I hope members will understand that perfectly legitimate request for Councillor McGee. If we extend it, you think it'd be better so folk can go around and talk to folk that would need to get that done. So we'll maybe 11:30.
Aye.
11:30 back here, please.
Yeah.
Please, if everybody could be back for 11:30. Yeah. Do you want, folks, wait just a minute. Councillor McGee, did you want if there's a proposal or two proposals that are different from what you had in front of you, does the members want those proposals in writing before we come back?
But I think that would be helpful so as we can come to a determination.
Just to advise Provost and members through you that as officers we don't have a written copy of either the motion or the amendment at this stage, as you would expect. So if that request has been made, it would need to be acceded to and responded to by those making the motion and the amendment. We don't have the ability to provide that.
Okay. Eddie, yep.
Just to confirm, we can, just make them available. So we'll sort that out in the next 10 minutes or so.
It's fine. Right, folks, 11:30. Thank you.
Would you mind stopping the recording just now, please? Thanks.